Art and design are strategic games. But in order to be in a position where you can actually make that work, you can't rely on fate. The vast majority of young artists and designers, they end up tapping out of the game because they can't figure out the time or the space to actually make the work. In this video, I'm going to talk about some investment ideas. I am not a financial advisor. This advice is informed by my own experience. If you choose to operate upon this advice, you acknowledge that you do so at your own risk and you accept responsibility for your own situation. So on with the show. I'm going to try and lay out an economic plan for the creative artist or for the designer, for the person who really wants a level of independence and wants to have a career in art and design. I'm going to lay out something very specific, a very tangible plan, and stuff that's been informed by my experience. I'm making this video in association with designinquiry.net. That's INQUIRY. It's a pretty rad design organization that was founded in 2007 by Peter Hall, Margot Halverson, and Mela Hammer. Make sure you check it out. I made a bullet-pointed cheat sheet to this information that is going to be linked to over here. It's an overview, shows the entire plan, and you can download it right here. All right, enough prevaricating around the bush. Let's get down to it, right to the heart of the matter, to a specific and actionable plan for the independently inclined artist, designer, and or musician. I was going to say magician. I guess that works as well. Arguably, the most important component of this plan is the capacity for you, for me, for the human to prioritize the long-term goal, the long-term plan over the short-term plan. The idea of delayed gratification. So if that is not your bag, you need to switch off the video right now. So a lot of people that I know, a lot of artists and designers and humans in general, they're more concerned about appearing as if they're successful than actually being successful. That is a major hindrance to the implementation of this plan. If you're really concerned about the type of car you drive, or if you're really concerned about the optics, then this might not actually work. The second key element in the plan is to work to strive to become cash flow positive. Cash flow is effectively the money that you're bringing in minus your expenses. So now you may think that the plan that what I'm about to talk about really only applies to people who are who have a healthy income. No. Whether you're making $15K, $50K, or $150K, the principles are still the same. And those principles are really, really basic, which is that you have to live below your means. Because what I'm about to talk about really addresses what you do with the money that you're bringing in during the month that you're not spending. So, if you are working as a preparator you're a painter working as a preparator at a museum, or if you are a designer working in a studio, if you're working at Home Depot, if you're making $15K, you have to live on 12. If you're making $50K, you have to live on 40. If you're making $150K, you have to live on 100. Because what we're going to do is we're going to set out a plan to leverage your cash flow positive situation. Regardless of how much money you make, cash flow is the difference between how much money you're bringing in and what you're spending. So it's your income minus expenses. There is a gigantic and absolutely enormous difference between the principle of saving and the principle of investing. Savings accounts their rate of return rarely outstrip the rate of inflation. So when you're parking your money in a savings account, For the most part, what you're doing is in fact losing money. Now, investing, I think the layman thinks that investing is a form of gambling. That's not what I'm advocating in any way, shape, or form. I'm advocating value-based investing, and what that involves is it involves, opening a Charles Schwab account or an E-Trade account or some kind of brokerage account, which you can just do on the internet. I'm going to link to some of the stuff below. Doesn't require a genius to do that. And then funding that account with some of the money that you have from your cash flow positive situation, $1,000 or something, $500. And then investing money in exchange traded funds at the very least. Now, you can invest in common stock. I'm not suggesting that you and I don't think that you should invest in Bitcoin or speculative investments because the risk is too high. So what is an ETF? An exchange-traded fund, or ETF, is a type of security that tracks an index, sector, commodity, or other asset, but which can be purchased or sold on a stock exchange, the same as regular stock. An ETF can be structured to track anything from the price of an individual commodity to a large and diverse collection of securities. ETFs can even be structured to track specific investment strategies. A well-known example is SPDR, S&P 500 ETF. The symbol is SPY, which tracks the S&P 500 index. ETFs can contain many types of investments, including stocks, commodities, bonds, or a mixture of investment types. An exchange-traded fund is a marketable security, meaning it has an associated price that allows it to be easily bought and sold. Now, the key takeaways here are an exchange-traded fund, ETF, is a basket of securities that trade on an exchange, just like a stock. ETF share prices fluctuate all day as the ETF is bought and sold. This is different from mutual funds that only trade once a day after the market closes. ETFs can contain all types of investments, including stocks, commodities, or bonds. Some offer U.S.-only holdings, while others are international. ETFs offer low expense ratios and fewer broker commissions than buying the stocks individually. But effectively, it's an economic vehicle that's traded like stocks, but it's a basket of stocks. So QQQ, as an example, is a NASDAQ exchange-traded fund. And what it does is it takes your money and buys fractional shares of every company that's listed in the NASDAQ. And so as the NASDAQ tracks up and down, the exchange-traded fund tracks exactly in lockstep with either the NASDAQ or the S&P 500. But basically what that is doing is that's a way of buying the most highly capitalized corporations that are traded in the United States. And that, in fact, it's value-based and it spreads your risk. The other thing that it does is hang on a second. Hello? Another important component of investing is the notion of dollar cost averaging. So the point here, it's a long way of saying that regardless of what the market does over a 5, 10, 15, 20-year period, that you invest at regular intervals. So as the market is moving up and down, what ends up happening is you're purchasing shares at different stock prices, creating a root mean square, creating an average price. So an important component of this process is to make sure that you stay absolutely disciplined. You stay disciplined in the investing process, that you're cash flow positive, that you take the money and rather than saving your money, that you invest your money into investment vehicles like exchange-traded funds or common stocks, value-based, that you dollar cost average that. So what that means is that every single month, if the stock market crashes or if the stock market is hot, you continually buy shares of your investments, and you don't simply buy stock when the market is hot, because effectively what you're doing then is you're paying top dollar for the pieces. You also don't try to time the market, because it's impossible to it is impossible to predict the future. But so you dollar cost average, and I'm going to link to some of these concepts below. But you dollar cost average. The next phase of the plan is depending upon how long it takes you, over a 5-year period. Realistic time frame is a 5-year, 6-year, 7-year period, 4-year period, anywhere from 4 to 7 years. You build up enough money to convert that investment by selling your stock, convert that investment into real estate. So you purchase either a home or a rental property. The emphasis in real estate is on real. It's a tangible material asset. Okay, so once you sell your stock positions, you purchase real estate. You purchase something to live in. Again, the major component, the major issue in doing this is to remain cash flow positive. Blobbity, cash flow positive. Do not spend more money than you actually have. That's what cash flow positive means. Get rid of your credit cards. Don't have debt if you can help it. And do not spend more money than you have. Spend less money than you have. That is the key to the whole thing. So don't become house poor. A lot of people, what they do is they say banks will give them a mortgage for more house than they can afford. So you have to look at your income. You look at your income, and what you end up doing is you end up making sure that your mortgage payment or your monthly payment is below, including your car and your food, has to be below what you're actually making. And the more significantly below what you're actually making, the more money you will have to invest. So once you have that real estate property, you begin again to reinvest in exchange traded funds or common stocks. And now with your investments in real estate, there's a couple critical components. There's this old expression that the most important aspect, what is the most important aspect of real estate investing? Location. You want to make sure that, and this is key, and again, you can see this here, is that you purchase the least expensive property, the absolute least expensive property in a neighborhood or on a block. You don't want to purchase the most expensive, because what you want to purchase something that over a 3 or 4 year period, you're going to flip, you're going to work on the curb appeal of that property. And you want there to be headroom in that zip code or on that block for that property to increase. So over a 4 year period, what you're going to do is you're going to work on the curb appeal of the property, and then you're going to sell that property on Zillow, avoiding realtor fees, and you're going to take the profit if the real estate market is up. You're going to take the profit from the sale of that property, and you're going to reinvest that. You're going to roll that over into a new property. You're going to flip that property for a more expensive piece. This is really important. So let's say you bought a house for a property for $150,000, or let's say $300,000. You bought a property for $300,000. Over a 4 year period, if the market is doing okay, you could end up selling that property potentially for $400,000. You're going to take that extra $100,000 and you're going to buy a different $600,000 property. But the point is that because you've turned a profit on that, your monthly payment and your debt ratio is going to stay the same. In other words, you're still going to be cash flow positive, still being able to invest your money. The point behind all of this is that during this entire process, as an artist or as an independently minded designer, you have to work on cultivating an audience for your work. This plan over a 10-year period, over a 15-year period, which sounds like a long time, but again, you have to prioritize the long-term goal over the short-term goal, will allow you a level of financial freedom that will untether you from corporate concerns. So you'll have the capacity, you'll have the freedom to make choices, artistic choices, and to be able to have time to make your work. You know, again, with all of this, there's this idea that these concerns shouldn't be the concerns of the artist or the designer. That if you're a writer, or if you're a musician, or if you're a painter, that somehow shit is magically going to take care of itself. Well, it's not going to. Come on, dude. You have to realize that art and design are strategic games, that this work remains untainted by commercial concerns, hopefully, and that it's not primarily an economic vehicle. But in order to be in a position where you can actually make that work, you can't rely on fate. The vast majority of young artists and designers, they end up tapping out of the game because they can't figure out the time or the space to actually make the work. So again, to recap, the most important components in this entire equation are two, as I see them. Well, three. But the first is to prioritize the long-term goal over the short-term goal. And that means to not be concerned with what the neighbors think of your car if you're driving a car that has 200,000 miles on it. The second thing is that you have to remain cash flow positive regardless of how much money you're actually making. You have to have the self-discipline if you're making $15K to live on 12 and to put that $2,000 not into savings. There are plenty of videos on the internet about investing, and you have to remember two things with investing, which is that you only take advice from a disinterested third party. If someone can benefit monetarily from giving you advice, you shouldn't take their advice. And the second thing is that if it sounds too good to be true, it is. I'm not advocating a get rich quick scheme. I'm suggesting that investing is different than saving, in that what you're doing is you're investing in value-based companies. So, companies like Apple Computer or whatever, you might not like their products, but the fact is that every human being on planet Earth wants an iPhone. That iPhone represents underlying value. So if you invest, as an example, in exchange traded funds, if you take your spare money, if you take that extra money and you keep pushing that money, dollar cost averaging, investing in absolutely disciplined intervals into exchange traded funds like the NASDAQ index, you're actually investing in Amazon, you're investing in Apple, and you're investing, and those things over time, what they end up doing is they end up carving out a kind of economic space where you either have passive income or where you're in a position where you don't have to spend all of your time trying to put food on the table. So our work doesn't magically happen. The capacity to make work and to be an artist, musician, or a designer, regardless of whether we want to acknowledge that or not, it has an economic component, and you have to think of it as a three-dimensional chess game, and you have to be strategic about it. So prioritizing long-term plan over short-term plan, making sure that you exist within a cash flow positive condition the entire time, investing with discipline in value-based investments, and then converting that investments in ETFs and in stocks into real estate, so that you have a place to live. And then in America anyway, the vast majority of wealth has been created through real estate investing, and there is this idea of flipping a house. That sounds, you don't need to think about it as flipping a house. What it is that you're leveraging the equity that's involved, that you've put into a house. And so this notion that you buy a house with a certain payment, right? As the real estate market goes up, you can actually sell that house and get a much better house with the same payment. And the better house can either provide you with rental income, passive income, to allow you to paint all day, or it can in fact just increase your ownership, your wealth, by being a better asset. But so this, I think that the sooner you start, the sooner a person starts with this. Doesn't matter what age you are, but the sooner a person starts with this, the more actual freedom that you have. And I think that there's this message in our culture, particularly for artists, that if you just simply opt out, that things are going to take care of themselves. They're not going to take care of themselves. There's just no way that they're going to take care of themselves. What you have to do is you have to be strategic about this. You have to actually think through work as an economic model. And the last thing, which I have given short shrift to, is the entire time you have to work. You absolutely have to work on building an audience, building literally, like cobbling together piece by piece an audience for your work. So as a designer, if you do a huge project on the side, or if you do a huge project, try to take the vast majority of the profits from that project and invest that. Or if you sell a big painting, if you sell a painting or sell a small painting, make sure that a large percentage of each one of those sales is invested. I hope this helps. I know it's a taboo subject. You're not supposed to think about this. A writer, musician, a poet, whatever, they're supposed to sit in a room and somehow magically make work. Well, food won't magically appear on the table, and the time and space to make work doesn't just magically appear out of nothing. You have to be strategic about it. There are plenty of resources available on the internet. I'm going to link to a bunch of the stuff below, and I hope this helps.